History beyond sleep. The place where history's darkest secrets refuse to stay buried. Tonight,
there is a stillness that lives among the peaks of Peru, a silence, not of absence, but of great remembering. When you step upon the ancient paths of Cusco, or place your fingers against the smooth, interlocking stones of Sacsayhuaman, you are not walking in the footprints of a people who have vanished, but in the architecture of a message that was never meant to be forgotten. And yet it nearly was. For centuries, the great Incan Empire was revered for its beauty, its engineering, its harmony with land and star. But beneath the mainstream stories told in textbooks and tourism guides, there is another tale older, more haunting, and quietly echoing through time. It begins not with the Spanish conquistadors, nor even the mighty Inca themselves. It begins with the stones, not carved in haste, nor hewn by primitive hands. These stones were placed with an intention that surpasses simple utility. They form walls that have resisted the trembling fury of earthquakes, that have watched sunrises for 1,000 years, and that whisper, some believe, in the language of geometry. Each one fits into its neighbors not with mortar, but with perfect angles, polygons upon polygons, some with more than 12 sides, joined so tightly a blade of grass cannot slip between them. No chisel marks, no tool evidence, just precision and permanence. To the casual eye they are majestic. To the curious heart they are mysterious. And to the few who listen more deeply, they may be mathematical. A code, not one of letters or language, but of vibration, proportion, and alignment. And here the trail turns. Over the last few decades, a growing number of researchers, engineers, mathematicians, even musicians have begun to suspect that these walls, these temples, these pathways across the sky were not merely beautiful or strong, but that they contained a message. Embedded in their measurements, their alignments with stars and solstices, their very construction may be a kind of record, a cipher, and as improbable as it seems, this cipher does not belong solely to the Inca. There are those who argue it points backward to a time before their rise, before even the ancestors of the Andes. To a place drowned by time and legend. To Atlantis. You see, the Inca themselves never claimed to have invented much of what they used. The great sun temples, the astronomical alignments, even the concept of Viracocha, their god of creation, was said to predate them. He was a bearded god who came from across the sea after a flood, bearing wisdom and knowledge. He did not stay, but he taught. Then he vanished across the Pacific, promising to return. This story echoes strangely, eerily, with myths told on faraway shores of Owanas of Quetzalcoatl, of beings who came from the ocean bearing secrets, only to disappear into legend. These tales form ripples across continents. Ripples from what, exactly? And if these stone walls designed with an intelligence we still struggle to replicate are not purely Incan, then where did the knowledge come from? In 2018, a group of researchers using LiDAR scanning technology found strange anomalies beneath the soil near several Andean temples, right angles buried in the earth, passages no longer used, and beneath them, chambers, cavities unopened, unmapped, unknown. But it wasn't just their shape that intrigued the scientists, it was the pattern they formed. One researcher described it anonymously as an intentional mathematical layout that reminded me of Platonic proportion. Another said, It's like someone buried a schematic, waiting for us to wake up enough to read it. There is no formal recognition of these findings in government archaeology circles. There are no museum displays. There are only fragments papers published and swiftly dismissed. Whispers in forums. Maps with missing keys dot, and yet the murmurs grow. The Incan city of Ollantaytambo, too, has raised questions. Its vast terraces are said to mirror the starry belt of Orion. Its megalithic blocks are positioned not only with mathematical accuracy, but according to some contain magnetic anomalies. One stone hums, another vibrates more sharply than its neighbors when tapped dot. It may be coincidence, or resonance, or memory dot. When the Inca built with stone, they didn't just build upward, they listened first. Each stone was alive to them. It had spirit. It had a name. They believed the mountains themselves were Apos, ancient beings watching over the land. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps the mountains were watching or remembering, for there is a hypothesis quietly circulating among independent researchers that the Andes, as they rise into the sky, once knew the sea as their mirror, that before the Andes rose there was water, that a civilization once stood here, then was swallowed by tectonic violence, and some of its survivors, brilliant, desperate, drifting, brought their knowledge inland, upward, into the mountains, where it could wait in stone dot, in symmetry dot, in silence. This is not something that mainstream archaeology confirms, but it does not disprove it either, for the Andes are vast and the jungle is thick. There are places even now that remain unmapped, and beneath the terraces and ruins that tourists walk each day, there may be more waiting to be found, more patterns dot, more pieces, and perhaps more of the code dot as night falls on this first chapter. We do not claim to know. We do not promise answers, but we offer the question and the gentle invitation to listen closely to stone. For there, between the silence of mountains and the stories of stars, something ancient whispers still, a murmur, a memory, a message in the rock. Sleep now, and let the sound of it rise through your dreams. In the gardens of ancient Athens, where figs ripened in the sun and the breeze carried the scent of salt from the Aegean, a man named Plato sat with students at his feet. He was not a historian, but a philosopher. And yet, in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, he recorded what has become one of the most enduring enigmas in human memory, a tale not of speculation, but, as he insisted, of truth passed down. He told of a mighty island nation, of temples that gleamed with orichalcum and domes of impossible size, of circular canals and irrigation that ran like veins through the land, of philosophers, engineers, astronomers, and then a fall, sudden, violent, swallowed by the sea in a single day and night. He called it Atlantis. His source, Solon, the revered Athenian lawmaker, who had traveled to Egypt generations earlier. There Egyptian priests told him the story inscribed, they claimed, in stone for over 9,000 years. It was, they said, not Greek history. It was human history. Plato, in turn, preserved the tale as both allegory and warning. But what if it was also a record? For centuries, most scholars dismissed Atlantis as myth, a clever metaphor for hubris, written by a man who used parable as his paintbrush. And perhaps it is, but perhaps it is also more. Let us listen again, this time not with academic skepticism, but with open, quiet curiosity. Let us consider not what Plato meant to say, but what he may have known. In his description, Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Heracles, what we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. It was said to be larger than Libya and Asia combined, and after its destruction, Plato says, the sea in that area became impassable, filled with mud and debris. These details seem oddly specific for fiction, but here is where the whisper grows louder. In recent decades, researchers have begun to notice that elements of Plato's Atlantis, its obsession with geometry, its structured society, its godlike founders resonate with other ancient civilizations, with Egypt, with Mesopotamia, and yes, with the Inca. Though oceans apart, there are curious echoes, sacred dualities, sun-worshipping priesthoods, obsession with astronomy, circular temples, and tales of gods who came from the sea. And here lies the riddle. Plato's Atlantis was no crude myth of golden cities. It was a society marked by deep balance, circular harmony, alignment with cosmic principles. Just like the Inca. The heart of Cusco, once the capital of the Inca Empire, was laid out with geometric precision. At its center was the Coricancha, a temple to the sun, sheathed in gold, shining like a mirror to the heavens. Plato's Atlantis, too, had a central temple to Poseidon, surrounded by rings of water and land, each perfectly proportioned. The structures of both civilizations, one in legend, one in stone, reflect an unusual grasp of spatial mathematics and sacred geometry. Coincidence? Perhaps. But consider this. Plato claimed the Atlanteans slowly lost their virtue, becoming arrogant and greedy. Their wisdom became pride, and the gods, displeased, unleashed the sea. Their knowledge, once a gift, became their downfall. Compare this to Incan oral traditions that speak of a time when the ancestors angered the gods, prompting floods and fire. The survivors were those who climbed high, into the mountains, into the clouds. Where they rebuilt. Now listen closely. Both stories speak of floods, both of fallen knowledge, and both of survivors who preserved sacred understanding, not through books, but through architecture, alignment, and encoded myth. If Atlantis fell and the survivors scattered, would it not make sense that they carried their knowledge not in bags, but in memory, in geometry. In symbols. In song. And perhaps in code. Let us turn again to Plato. His dialogues break off mysteriously, unfinished. The tale of Atlantis ends mid-sentence, as if lost in the telling. Scholars have long debated why. Some say he never finished. Others suggest he was warned, silenced. But in the quiet corners of esoteric tradition, another idea exists, that Plato had said enough, that those with eyes to see and ears to hear would understand, that the true map to Atlantis was not geographical, but geometric, a cipher woven into myth, carried across continents. This brings us back to the Andes. In several Incan temples, especially in Ollantaytambo and Sacsayhuaman, there are spiral motifs carved into stone. Not just any spirals, but double spirals. The same pattern found in Celtic art, in Minoan temples, in DNA. And in Plato's description of the central island of Atlantis. Coincidence again? Or is it memory echoing? Consider, too, the Incas' reverence for duality, sun and moon, earth and sky, male and female. Plato described Atlantis as founded by twin brothers, 10 pairs, to be precise. Each governed a portion of the land, bound by law and sacred order. Both civilizations seem to grasp the universe not as random, but as relational dot. They designed their worlds accordingly. What if these aren't separate civilizations, but chapters? In the same long, scattered story? A story that stretches back to an advanced society, call it Atlantis, call it something else, whose survivors seeded the earth with echoes, not to rebuild the past, but to guard its wisdom, to plant it where it might one day be remembered. Dot in mountains, in myths, in stone dot, and now as satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar peel back the skin of the earth, we are finding things we were never meant to forget. Not proof, but pattern. And that's where the code begins. Dot, as we leave Plato beneath his. Olive trees and the soft voices of ancient Athens fade into the dusk. We do not say he was right or wrong. We say he remembered something. And the Andes may remember too. Dot, let this chapter rest in your mind like a pebble dropped into still water. Not a splash, just a ripple, the kind that travels far. Dot, and sometimes comes back beneath the vast sky where condors wheel and clouds drift like slow rivers. The stones of the Andes stand as ancient witnesses to a forgotten knowledge. Not just building blocks. These stones speak in a language that predates spoken word, a language written in angles, curves, and fits so precise they seem impossibly perfect. Dot, in the heart of Cusco, at the fortress temple of Sacsayhuaman, immense megalithic walls curve gently in waves that echo the surrounding hills. The stones, some weighing over 100 tons, are shaped so exactly that no mortar was needed to hold them together. Each rock, like a puzzle piece, nestles into its neighbor with breathtaking precision. Look closely. You will notice polygons, with 5, 7, even 12 sides fitting together like the finest mosaic in the universe. How was this done? By what knowledge did the Inca masons shape these stones so perfectly that centuries later, not a blade of grass slips between them? This mystery has perplexed scholars and engineers alike. Some say it is the work of divine hands, gifted by the gods. Others believe it was the secret of an advanced civilization, one with skills lost to time. But geometry itself may be the key. Geometry is the language of the universe, the silent architecture of existence. The ancient Greeks called it the mother of all knowledge. But the Inca, long before meeting European philosophers, also understood this deeply. For them, geometry was not mere measurement, it was sacred. It was how they aligned their cities with the stars, how they built temples that sang with the sun's light. At Sacsayhuaman, the stone's shapes correspond to geometric principles that modern researchers can identify. The golden ratio, Pythagorean triangles, concentric circles, and the angles of sacred polygons. These forms are not arbitrary. They encode balance, harmony, unity, but there is more. Beyond precision. The stones reveal a message through their placement. The walls follow the outline of a puma, sacred to the Inca as a symbol of strength and power. The fortress itself is arranged to represent this powerful animal, connecting earth and spirit. And the stones seem to hum a quiet song when touched, a resonance that some have described as a kind of memory, vibrating in the rock. Scientists exploring this phenomenon talk about the piezoelectric effect. The idea that quartz and certain minerals in the stones can generate electrical charges under pressure. Could the Inca have known how to harness this effect? Could the very walls themselves have been designed as a form of living memory vibrating with encoded knowledge? This is not fantasy but hypothesis. Consider that the Inca had no written alphabet, yet they constructed one of the most sophisticated empires in pre-Columbian America. Their knowledge was preserved through quipu-knotted strings that encoded information, but the stones themselves may have served as a monumental ledger, a tactile archive of cosmic order. In many ways, the stones are the most enduring text of all. Look deeper, and the geometry reflects celestial patterns. The walls align with solstices, equinoxes, and star clusters. The angles echo the movements of the sun, moon, and constellations. Thus, the Inca temple becomes a bridge of conversation between the heavens and the earth. Some modern researchers argue that this bridge is not a simple coincidence, but an inheritance from an older tradition passed down through millennia from a civilization lost beneath the waves. The Atlantis code. It suggests that geometry was the language of that civilization, a language deliberately inscribed in stone waiting to be rediscovered. But why encode knowledge in geometry and stone? Why not in words or stories? Because geometry is eternal. Words fade. Stories change, but a perfect polygon, a precise angle, a resonance in the rock, these endure beyond generations, beyond conquest and destruction. They speak not only to the mind, but to the soul. The Inca understood this deeply. They knew that in geometry there is rhythm, balance, and life. Their temples, their walls are living poems. Silent songs. Songs that tell of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Tonight, as you listen, imagine placing your hand on one of those ancient stones, feeling the cool surface, the slight vibration beneath your fingertips. Imagine hearing a whisper, not of voices, but of shape and form, a message encoded in the language of the universe. The stones do not speak loudly. They do not shout. They murmur, they breathe, they remember. And in their geometry lies a key to a code that may unlock not only the mysteries of the Andes, but of the world beyond. As we close this chapter, and the night deepens, let your mind rest on the delicate balance of these stones. In their silence, find the quiet certainty of something eternal, the geometry of memory. The architecture of dreams. Sleep now, cradled by stone and sky, carried gently on the waves of time. Among the treasures of the Inca Empire, there's one artifact that puzzles and enchants in equal measure, a delicate tangle of strings knotted with care, called Quipu. To the untrained eye, a quipu is merely a bundle of colored cords, knotted here and there with no apparent order. Yet for the Inca, these knots formed a sophisticated system of communication and record-keeping, vital to an empire that never developed a written alphabet. Quipu were more than accounting tools. They were the lifeblood of the Incan bureaucracy, preserving census data, harvest records, calendars, and even stories. Every knot, every color, every placement held meaning. But here lies the mystery. Modern researchers now suspect that quipu may have been far more than numeric tallies. They may have encoded language, history, and sacred knowledge, a complex script. Woven into strings. The quipu is a code, a language of knots, Imagine a library where every book is a strand of rope, every page a knot tied by patient fingers, every color a symbol waiting to be read. Some quipu were enormous, with hundreds of cords, tied and dyed in patterns only the initiated could understand. Others were smaller, more personal messages from one hand to another, a whisper suspended in thread. For centuries, Spanish conquistadors dismissed quipu as simple tools, and many were destroyed or lost. The knowledge of how to read them faded, like the sunset over the mountains. But now, thanks to modern technology and patient scholarship, we are beginning to unravel their secrets. Recent studies have used computer algorithms to analyze knot patterns and colors, discovering complex statistical patterns that suggest quipu contained phonetic information, much like an alphabet, or at least a proto-writing system. If this is true, then the Inca had developed a form of writing, hidden, silent, woven. But more intriguing still, some quipu show patterns that correspond to celestial cycles, agricultural rhythms, and even mythic stories. These are not merely records of taxes or corn. They are stories of the sky, the land, and the divine. Could the quipu be the threads of the Atlantis code? If the stones speak geometry, and the stars whisper in temple alignments, then the quipu speak in thread. They are a tactile archive of memory, encoded in a language both simple and profound. The knots themselves may represent numbers, but the colors, reds, yellows, blues, may hold symbolic meanings tied to nature, spirit, and time. Some researchers believe that quipu were used to pass down secret knowledge, rituals, and cosmic insights. Hidden beneath the surface of everyday use. This would explain why quipu were considered sacred, entrusted only to select keepers' keepers who memorized vast libraries of knots. Acting as living libraries themselves. In this way, the quipu bridges the intangible with the tangible. A story, a calendar, a prophecy, all encoded in knots. And what if this tradition of coded threads was inherited from an older source? A civilization lost beneath the waves? The concept of knot-based communication is ancient and widespread. From the Chinese jaguan bone inscriptions to Polynesian barkcloth symbols, to the intricate weaving of the Andean peoples, thread has long been a vessel of memory. It is a natural, human language. And it is quietly revolutionary. The quipu reminds us that communication need not be bound to ink and parchment. That memory can be woven, tied, and carried on the breath of wind through mountain valleys. It teaches us to listen with hands, to read with touch, and to remember in silence. Tonight, as you imagine the quipu, picture a solitary Inca keeper sitting beside a fire, the flickering light casting shadows on the knots he gently unties and reties. Each knot is a syllable, a number, a prayer, each cord a thread that connects the present to the past. And in this weaving, a secret survives, a code waiting to be read, a story waiting to be told. As the night deepens, let the rhythm of the knots soothe your thoughts like a lullaby sung by the Andes themselves. In their quiet weave lies the echo of an ancient song. Sleep now, wrapped in threads of memory, cradled by the timeless fabric of human knowing. The city of Cusco, once the thriving heart of the Inca Empire, is more than a city. It is a living map, a spiritual symbol carved into the earth, a message hidden in plain sight. Walk the streets, and you will find that the layout of Cusco is no accident of urban planning. From the sky, the city traces the powerful form of a puma, a creature sacred to the Andean world. Its head rises in the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, massive stones curving in the shape of ears and jaws. Its body flows through the city's streets and plazas, and its tail curls in the hills beyond. The puma was more than an animal to the Inca. It was a guardian spirit, a symbol of strength, agility, and the earthly power that held the balance between humans and nature. To build a city in its shape was to ask the puma itself to watch over the people, to protect the sacred balance. But beyond the symbolic, there is something deeper, a code encoded in the city's very form. The urban fabric of Cusco aligns with the cardinal directions, with waterways and with mountain peaks that served as spiritual anchors. This geometric and natural harmony reveals an ancient understanding that the city was not only a home but a sacred organism, alive and breathing with the rhythms of earth and sky. The puma shape is no mere outline. It encodes layers of meaning. In Incan cosmology, the puma is connected to the earthly world, the K Pasha, the realm of the living. Above lies the sky world, Hanan Pasha, and below the underworld, Aku Pasha. Together, these three realms formed a sacred triad that governed Incan life. Cusco, under the puma's shadow, sits firmly in the middle, a meeting place of worlds. But there is more. The puma also connects to the stars. Its eyes, according to some theories, align with key stars in the night sky. The constellation that the Inca associated with the puma may correspond to parts of the Milky Way, which they revered as a celestial river flowing above the earth. This stellar connection suggests that the city was designed not only in the image of an earthly beast, but as a terrestrial reflection of the heavens. Such reflections appear repeatedly in ancient cultures. Cities built as echoes of the sky, temples as mirrors of the stars. This principle is known as above, so below, a cosmic balance. In Cusco, this balance is etched in stone and street. The idea of the city as a living puma suggests a deep understanding of sacred geometry and symbolic resonance. Some scholars propose that this design served a dual purpose: spiritual protection and encoded knowledge. The puma form may have been a visual mnemonic, a map of sacred laws, a guide for initiates. The city itself becomes a text, read not only by eyes but by feet and spirit. Imagine walking its streets as a ritual act, tracing the lines of the puma, connecting with its power. Imagine the Inca priest king, the Sapa Inca, walking this living beast, drawing strength from its form. Beyond its symbolism, the puma's shadow is a metaphor for hidden knowledge, something present but unseen, known but silent. Just as the puma moves quietly through the forest, the knowledge encoded in Cusco moves quietly through time. It waits in the stones of Sacsayhuaman, in the flow of the Vilcanota River, in the angles of temple walls, waiting for those who listen. This idea of a living city guarded by a sacred beast resonates deeply with the Atlantis code. If Atlantis was a civilization whose knowledge was encoded in landscape and structure, then Cusco may be its echo, a place where ancient wisdom was reborn in stone and shadow. The puma is the guardian of this knowledge. Its presence reminds us that the ancient world spoke not only in words but in shapes, animals, and stories folded into the earth itself. As night falls and stars rise, imagine Cusco sleeping beneath the shadow of the puma. a silent guardian watching over a code whispered through centuries. Let your mind wander along its curved streets, tracing the shape of strength and mystery, and as you drift into sleep, carry with you the image of the Paima watchful, wise, and eternal dot. In its shadow lies a message, soft, quiet, waiting to be found. The Andes are a land of fire and stone. Deep beneath their grandeur, tectonic plates shift and grind, trembling and slow, powerful dances that shape mountains and valleys, rivers and plains. Earthquakes ripple through this rugged land like whispers of an ancient voice, relentless and unyielding dot, and yet through centuries of seismic fury, the great stone walls of the Inca endure, not cracked, not toppled, not bowed beneath the earth's restlessness. Walk among the ruins of Sacsayhuaman or Ollantaytambo, and you will find stones fitted so perfectly, their joints so precise, that centuries of earthquakes have failed to pry them apart. How was this possible? The secret lies not only in strength, but in an extraordinary knowledge, an ancient understanding of balance, flexibility, and harmony with the earth's rhythms. The Inca architects did not seek to fight the tremors. Instead, they embraced them. Their walls are masterpieces of what modern engineers call seismic-resistant construction. Each stone is carefully shaped and polished to fit with its neighbors like interlocking puzzle pieces, irregular and multi-sided, so that pressure is distributed evenly. The stones are often trapezoidal or polygonal, shapes that absorb shock and movement rather than resist it rigidly. But beyond shape, the walls were built without mortar. The stones rest against one another through perfect friction, held in place by gravity and geometry. This technique allows the walls to move slightly in an earthquake and then settle back into place. Without collapse, it is a dance with nature, not a battle. Such knowledge of seismic construction is rare even today. Yet the Inca discovered it centuries before modern engineering principles were formalized. This suggests a deep understanding of the Earth's subtle forces, and it suggests something else. Could this mastery of stone be more than practical? Could it be a message? In the perfect fit of these stones, in their silent resilience, might there lie an encoded language, a proof of knowledge preserved through catastrophe? A message that says, we survived. We remember. Some researchers believe that the design principles behind these walls echo architectural wisdom passed down from an older, perhaps global tradition, one that may connect with the lost civilization of Atlantis. If Atlantis fell to seismic disaster or flood, its survivors may have carried their knowledge to the high places of the earth, the mountains that touch the sky. There, they encoded their secrets in stone. Secrets not just of strength, but of harmony between earth, stone, and man. And these secrets were written not with ink, but with geometry, fit, and proportion. Some experts who have studied Inca masonry marvel at its precision. They note that many of the stones were quarried miles away and transported across difficult terrain. Each stone's face is shaped to match its neighbors so exactly that even a single sheet of paper cannot fit between them. In places, the joints form perfect zigzag patterns, believed to help absorb seismic shocks. These patterns may also carry symbolic meaning, woven into the stone itself like a silent script. In other words, the earthquake-proof walls are a kind of code, both practical and spiritual. demonstration of human ingenuity. And a tribute to endurance. But there is another layer. The Inca believed that their builders were guided by divine inspiration, touched by the gods who controlled the earth and sky. They called these divine forces Pachamama Mother Earth and Inti the Sun. To build a wall that withstands earthquakes was to honor Pachamama's power and to align with her rhythms. Thus, construction became ritual, geometry became prayer. The walls are not just structures. They are living testaments to a sacred contract between humans and nature. As you wander the ruins today, imagine the builders at work, hands shaping granite, eyes measuring angles with care, minds attuned to forces unseen. They were not just masons, but poets of stone, crafting a message to the future, a message that says, though the earth may tremble and worlds may fall, wisdom endures. As night deepens, picture these walls standing firm beneath the stars, breathing in the mountain air, holding the memory of ages in their silent embrace. Let the quiet strength of their design soothe your mind, a lesson in resilience, a whisper of hope. Sleep now, wrapped in the comfort of stones that have withstood the test of time and tremor. Their secret message lies beneath your fingertips, waiting to be felt, long before telescopes, long before ink maps and constellations scribbled by Western minds. The people of the Andes looked up and saw the sky as it truly was, a living scroll, unfolding each night in rhythms both divine and instructive. To them, the heavens were not distant, they were near, reflected in rivers, mirrored in maze, written in the slow turning of shadows on stone. The Inca, like many ancient civilizations, were meticulous skywatchers, but unlike many, they did not map constellations only by the stars. They also read the darkness. Among the bands of the Milky Way, where modern eyes see only void, the Inca saw animals, living spirits, sacred silhouettes. They called the Milky Way Mayu, celestial river, believing it flowed above the Andes just as the Vilcanota River coursed below. It was more than metaphor. It was connection. What happened in the sky echoed on earth, and what was seen above was written into temples, rituals, and time itself. The Inca identified constellations not just by clusters of light, but by the inky shadows between them, the llama, the fox, the serpent, the toad. These dark cloud constellations were sacred guardians. Their appearances, positions, and alignments foretold the seasons, the coming rains, the right moment to plant, the sacred festivals to mark. They watched not only with eyes, but with memory. And perhaps with knowledge inherited. In Cusco, certain temples and city alignments correspond to solstice sunrises and equinox sunsets. Walls and windows direct light precisely on significant days of the year. Sunlight enters a chamber, casting a golden path across the floor, or illuminating a sacred idol for just a moment, as if the heavens are speaking through a shaft of gold. This is not coincidence. It is design. Intentional, celestial, an architecture of timing. Many of these structures are so precisely aligned that even now, centuries after their construction, the same patterns hold. They are clocks. They are calendars. They are questions shaped in stone, waiting to be asked again. Take Intihuatana, the hitching post of the sun. It is not merely a stone pillar. It is a solar anchor. At the equinox, the sun aligns perfectly with its tip, as though being tethered briefly. Before continuing its celestial journey, it is a quiet moment, but powerful, a pause in the sky's great rhythm, a punctuation mark in the poem of the cosmos. Could this understanding have come from the Inca alone, or was it passed down? There are whispers among researchers, quiet and speculative, that the Inca inherited this sky wisdom from an older source, that survivors from a lost maritime civilization, one obsessed with the stars, carried this knowledge inland, and where better to watch the sky than from 12,000 feet above sea level, where the air is thin, the nights are clear, and the stars fall closer to your breath? In this silence atop the Andes, the sky becomes a scroll, a whispering dome, and every flicker of starlight becomes a verse. The Inca tracked the Pleiades, known to them as Colca, a storehouse. Its position foretold the success of the harvest. A dim appearance warned of famine. A bright twinkle promised abundance. Is it possible that such precise predictive astronomy came from centuries of observation alone? Perhaps, but perhaps it came from something else too, a framework, a code. One that linked sky to earth, patterned prophecy. This sky-watching wasn't merely academic. It was existential. It shaped agriculture, politics, and spiritual life. It also suggests a civilization not just in awe of the stars, but one who spoke their language. If Atlantis was, as Plato described, a highly advanced society, it almost certainly would have been one of astronomers, civil engineers of the heavens, and if fragments of that knowledge survived, carried in the minds of travelers who fled to the highlands, wouldn't it appear just like this? Not in books, not in charts, but in temples aligned with stars, in dark constellations inked across the Milky Way, in rituals tied to light and shadow, all of it embedded into Incan life, not as legend, but as structure. And once again, the form matches the message. Just as the Inca stones resist earthquakes, their temples capture sunrises. Just as Quipu record numbers, the sky records time. Each part reflects the other. As above, so below. As the stars turn slowly across the night sky, so do the thoughts of those who watched them long ago. And tonight their wisdom drifts gently back to us on the same celestial winds. Let it lull you now, the slow turning of stars, the deep breath of the mountain, the silent knowing of ancient eyes lifted skyward. The sky still speaks. And the old watchers still listen. Sleep beneath their gaze, cradled in the high silence, wrapped in a blanket of stars. Maps, as we know them, are ink on parchment, land described by lines, rivers marked with curves, mountains flattened into symbols. But the ancients had a different kind of map, one written not in ink, but in alignment, scattered across the Peruvian Andes. A mysterious pattern emerges when you connect the locations of major Incan temples, ceremonial centers, and pilgrimage. Roots. Lines, straight, deliberate lines. They are called Sikhs, ancient pathways of power and meaning, radiating like spokes from the heart of Cusco. There were once 42 of them, each one connecting a sequence of sacred sites, springs, stones, shrines, and temples, all woven together in a living network of land and spirit. To the Inca, these lines were not merely roads. They were memory tracks, ritual corridors, veins of a living landscape through which sacred energy, Kamakum, was believed to flow, and yet, when mapped on a modern grid, these seeks appear to form a geometry more advanced than once thought. Some align with solar events, the rising of the sun at solstice, or the moon at its peak. Others point toward distant mountain peaks, the Apis, the spirit lords of stone, and some, inexplicably, reach toward sites hundreds of miles away, with alignments too precise to be coincidence. Satellite mapping reveals that certain megalithic sites, Cusco, Ollantaytambo, Sacsayhuaman, Pisac, and even Machu Picchu, seem to follow a hidden logic, a larger geometry, as if the Andes themselves were shaped into an observatory dot. And here the whisper begins again, because similar patterns have been found across the globe, in Egypt, in Mesopotamia, in Cambodia, in Ireland. Temples and pyramids, mounds and stone circles, all aligned to solstices, to stars, to each other. It is as if a single hand or a single tradition touched them all. Some researchers call this the global grid hypothesis, a theory that suggests that the ancients mapped the earth using principles of sacred geometry and geodesy, that they knew the size and curvature of the planet, that they understood magnetic lines of force, the subtle energy fields some call ley lines, and that they placed their most sacred sites upon these intersections, forming a lattice of resonance, a planetary map, carved into the crust of the earth. And what if the Inca were part of this pattern, or inheritors of it? According to Andean legend, the first Inca emerged from Lake Titicaca, guided by a golden staff that would sink into the earth when the right place was found, the sacred center. That place was Cusco. And this staff? Some believe it was not only a symbol, but a tool of measurement, a tuning rod, a device to find resonance in the land. And once the center was found, the rest could be measured. From Cusco, the Sikhs radiated outward, aligning sacred sites to solstices, stars, and invisible lines that hum beneath the skin of the earth. Perhaps it was more than religious design. Perhaps it was a memory of ancient engineering. When archaeologists examined the alignment between Machu Picchu and Choqquequirao, another mountain citadel hidden in the jungle, they were astonished by the straightness of the route, not just erect, but geodesically precise, and at several points along the routes, huge carved stones appear, shaped into mysterious forms, stairways to nowhere, thrones carved into hillsides, water channels that flow without origin. Some believe these are not monuments, but markers. Coordinates. WAYPOINTS in an ancient navigational system. A stone map encoded in landscape. Some align with underground aquifers. Others point to mountain peaks or mirror constellations above. These are not random placements. They are intentional, multi-layered, and encoded. And the most astonishing thing? The same principle appears in Plato's Atlantis. In his writings. Atlantis was laid out in perfect symmetry, a capital ringed with water, aligned to cardinal directions, sacred mountains surrounding a center of power, temples aligned to stars. Sound familiar? If Atlantis was real, if it was a civilization rooted in sacred geometry and planetary harmony, then its memory may live on in these alignments, not in the names, not in the myths, but in the shapes. In the placement of stone upon land. If you trace these lines on a map, If you follow them across the jagged skin of the Andes, you begin to see what the ancients saw, the earth not as chaotic, but composed. A being with energy lines, a living organism with bones of granite and veins of water, and thought. And when the Inca placed a temple, they weren't just building, they were tuning. They were participating in a larger system, like fingers on a stringed instrument. Each alignment, each carved map, was a note in a planetary symphony. And if these notes are connected, then we are reading music from an ancient composer. A code, a memory. A map. Perhaps not to find Atlantis beneath the sea, but to recognize its echo in the highlands. To hear the song again, playing in stone and line in silence. As the night grows deep, imagine these ancient lines glowing faintly in the dark, radiant paths across mountains, stretching beyond vision. You may not see them with your eyes, but perhaps you can feel them. A tug in the heart, a pull in the bones. Sleep now beneath the carved map of the earth, and let the hidden alignments guide you gently into dreams of forgotten harmony. The Inca called themselves children of the sun, but even they spoke in hushed tones about the ones who came before, the Napa Mashu, the ancient ones. They were not named in royal lists or sung of in imperial hymns, but their work endured. In stone. Every Inca mason, no matter how skilled, would eventually find a wall, a stairway, a carved platform so precise, so massive, so alien in its construction, that they would not take credit for it. Instead, they would say, "This was already here. In Cusco, the base stones of certain walls are cyclopean in scale, multi-ton monoliths, carved with unexplainable precision. Upon them the Inca built their temples, smaller and more refined, but the foundations, ancient, mysterious. At Sacsayhuaman, the same pattern appears, lower levels made of massive interlocking megaliths, some weighing over 100 tons, smoothed and joined without mortar. Above them, more modest Inca-era stones, still well made, but clearly younger. Even the Inca engineers, brilliant as they were, could not replicate the scale and perfection of these older stones. Who then built them? In the town of Ollantaytambo, massive blocks lie scattered near the Temple of the Sun, as if abandoned mid-construction. They were transported from a quarry across a valley, over rivers and up mountain faces, a feat barely conceivable today. Even with cranes. No records remain of how they were moved. No writings. No wheels. Local legend tells of giants who came in the age before time, of sky people or demigods who shaped the mountains. Another tale speaks of Viracocha, the Great, bearded creator god who walked the earth teaching civilization, then vanished over the sea. It is tempting to call these myths, but myths often remember what history forgets. What if these stories are echoes, not inventions, but memories? Around the world, similar echoes stir. In Egypt, at the base of the Great Pyramid, enormous blocks are fitted with the same uncanny precision. In Lebanon, the stones of Baalbek weigh hundreds of tons, so large they defy modern engineering. In Malta, in Turkey, in Bolivia's Tiwanaku, the same story repeats. Massive stones, ancient walls, and a missing chapter between them and the people. Who came after? At Tiwanaku, just south of Lake Titicaca, a site predating the Inca by 1,000 years, we find Pamapunku, a platform of intricately cut andesite blocks that seem almost machined. Drilled holes, right-angled channels, precision joins, all carved into stones that are among the hardest on earth. The site lies shattered as if by some great cataclysm, and no one knows how it was built. Not truly. Could these be the fingerprints of an old or forgotten civilization? A civilization with knowledge of quarrying, transport, engineering, perhaps even a mastery of energy and geometry now lost? Many researchers quietly wonder, were these the Atlanteans? Not the mythical beings of cartoons and fantasy, but the survivors of a real maritime culture, one that sailed across the oceans before recorded time and built in stone to last through ages and floods. The Inca never claimed to have built Tiwanaku, nor did they claim the earliest foundations of their own capital. Instead, they integrated, they restored. They built upon in this way. They became the bridge between the old builders and modern. Memory. Even their legends hint at inheritance. In the Inca creation myth, the first people emerged from caves near Lake Titicaca, sent by the sun god to find the navel of the world, Cusco. But they were not the first beings. Before them came the giants, the people of stone, the ones destroyed in a great flood, sent by the gods to cleanse the earth. A flood. I fall. A rebirth. This sequence echoes through cultures across continents, from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica. The memory of an age that ended in water and a wisdom that almost vanished, but not entirely. In the stonework and the alignments, in the myths, a thread remains, and it may lead back to Atlantis, not as a single city, but as a civilization whose light dimmed slowly, and whose embers scattered across the earth. The Andes, remote and high, may have been one of the last places to preserve that flame. The Inca kept it alive, quietly, respectfully, layer by layer, preserving the work of the builders. Before not as conquerors, but as stewards, caretakers of something deeper than even they could fully explain. So tonight, let your thoughts drift back further, beyond the Inca, beyond the myths, to the hands that shaped unyielding stone and left behind a message too heavy to move, too quiet to ignore. Feel the weight of that silence. Feel the memory in the stone. Sleep now beneath the watch of those who built before names were written, before time was kept, when stone was the language of memory and temples were messages to the stars. High in the Andes, nearly 13,000 feet above the sea, lies a lake so still it seems to hold the sky itself. Lake Titicaca, a name that shimmers. In myth, history, and silence. It is the highest navigable lake on earth, vast and glistening, stretching across the border of modern Peru and Bolivia. But it is not its size or height that makes it sacred. It is what it remembers. To the Inca, Titicaca was the cradle of their civilization, the place from which the first humans emerged. From its glassy waters, Manco Capac and Mama Aclo, the son and daughter of the sun god Inti, were sent to bring order to a wild world. They carried with them a golden staff and a divine instruction. Find the place where the staff sinks effortlessly into the ground, and there build the center of the Tumti world. That place became Cusco, but their origin was the lake. Even before the Inca, older cultures called this lake sacred. The Tiwanaku, the Aymara, the Kola, all traced their beginnings to its shores. its depths, its mysteries, and perhaps they were right to do so, because the lake holds more than reflections, that it holds ruins, sunken beneath the waters. Off the coast near the Isla del Sol, the island of the sun, divers have discovered ancient structures, walls, steps, roads, even large ceremonial platforms, now swallowed by time. Stone blocks, aligned in geometric patterns. Some say these are remnants of the Tiwanaku civilization. Others believe they are older still, older than they known, older than memory. The island of the sun, rising gently from the lake's surface, was once a major pilgrimage site for the Inca. They believed it was the exact birthplace of the sun, where the star first touched the earth and gave rise to the human world. Pilgrims would walk the sacred trail, a path that runs across the island's spine, visiting carved stones, temples, and ceremonial terraces, all aligned with solar events. From certain points, the sun rises perfectly through stone gates during the solstices, as though passing through time's own doorway. But even here, Inca builders constructed atop older foundations, and the question deepens: who built first? Who placed the stones that now lie beneath the waves? Could the rising waters have swallowed a city long before the Inca ever arrived? One Bolivian legend speaks of a city named Huanacu, a city of light and knowledge that angered the gods by becoming too proud, too distant from the sacred. As punishment, a great flood was sent, drowning the land and casting the survivors into the mountains. The same story echoes in Plato's Atlantis, a prideful people punished by flood, their shining city lost beneath the sea. And in the Andean version, the survivors wandered, bearing what fragments of knowledge they could carry, seeking high ground, seeking renewal. Could the temples of the Inca, their sacred geometry and sky alignments, be echoes of this memory? Not original inventions, but reverent reconstructions? The lake itself whispers softly. Scientists studying its geology have confirmed that Lake Titicaca was once much lower in level, and that its shoreline has risen dramatically over thousands of years, likely due to tectonic uplift and glacial melt. Some of the now submerged ruins may have once stood proudly on dry land, ruins that predate Inca, predate Tiwanaku, possibly predating even agriculture in the region. If so, then the memory of a drowned city is not just myth, but a veiled history. And here we find another clue. The architecture beneath the lake bears remarkable similarities to sacred sites across the ancient world. Massive stone blocks arranged with precision, steps that lead nowhere, as if once rising from a central plaza now buried in silt. Stone circles whose purpose has been forgotten, but whose presence speaks of ceremony. These echoes in design, in story, in silence resonate across continents, and perhaps across time. If a highly advanced civilization once existed, if Atlantis, or something like it, was more than fable, then Lake Titicaca may be one of its last outposts. High in the clouds, far from oceans, safe from the tide. Here, knowledge was preserved, not in books but in terraces, not in scrolls but in stars and stones. The Inca, inheriting these mysteries, honored them. They did not claim to create. They remembered, they restored, they listened. Tonight, let us do the same. Let us imagine drifting on the lake in the quiet, hours before dawn, when the water holds the stars in its skin. Beneath you, Silent cities sleep. Above you, constellations wheel like slow-breathing giants, and all around, the mountains keep their watch. The air is thin, the light is blue. The lake is still, and somewhere below, a secret waits, unmoving, unchanging, just waiting to be understood. Let your thoughts descend into that silence now, into that mirror of sky and time, and let the cradle of the sun rock you gently into sleep. Gold has always held a sacred glow in the Andes, shimmering like the sun itself trapped in metal. To the Inca, gold was the sweat of the sun god, Inti, a divine essence more precious than wealth, more enduring than power. Among their many artifacts, sun discs stand apart, thin, round plates of gold, sometimes adorned with intricate designs of serpents, rays, or cosmic animals. These discs were not simply ornamental. They were portals into belief, geometry, and celestial knowledge. Yet many of these sun discs are shrouded in mystery. Crafted with precision and artistry, they appear throughout ancient sites, often buried deep in temples or secret caches. Their placement suggests they were intended to be hidden, not lost but protected. Why? Some scholars propose that these discs were designed to capture and reflect sunlight in sacred ceremonies, turning temples into living stars. When placed just right, a sun disk would catch a beam of light and scatter it into dazzling patterns, creating a ritual dance of fire and shadow. Others argue that the discs encoded information, celestial calendars, mythic stories, or mathematical patterns written in the language of symbol and light. Their circular shape reflects the sun's own perfect form, a symbol of eternity and cyclical time. But there is another layer, a possible link to the lost civilization of Atlantis. Plato's description of Atlantis mentions great temples adorned with gold and precious metals, a city radiant with light. Some researchers suggest that the craftsmanship and sacred use of gold discs in the Andes may be a continuation of that tradition. Carried far from the sunken city by wandering survivors, these discs then become silent witnesses, fragments of a larger cultural memory, transformed and reinterpreted across centuries and continents. The iconography on many discs supports this idea. Serpents entwined with suns, cosmic rays radiating outward, and abstract symbols align with motifs found in distant ancient cultures. Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Mesoamerica. Could these golden discs be a universal language of the sacred? A code written in sunfire? The Inca believed that gold was the tears of the sun, and to wear or display these discs was to wear divine favor. Priests and rulers often carried them as tokens of power and connection to the celestial, yet their deliberate concealment, buried beneath floors, hidden in sacred nooks, suggests a deeper secret, a knowledge too precious, too powerful, to be exposed to all. Some archaeologists have uncovered small sun discs, carefully wrapped in textiles, placed in offerings alongside other precious objects. These offerings were not mere gifts, but contracts, pledges between humans and gods, a dialogue in gold. One especially remarkable sun disk, found near Lake Titicaca, is decorated with concentric circles and radiating lines, and is believed to represent not only the sun, but also the movement of the planets. This suggests a sophistication that transcends simple worship. It hints at astronomy, mathematics, and possibly encoded knowledge about the cosmos. In this way, the discs become more than ritual objects. They become tools of understanding, keys to a cosmic code. Imagine the ceremonies where these discs caught the first light of dawn. Temples flooded with golden rays, priests chanting ancient hymns, the fire of the sun reflected and multiplied. The discs glimmered like small suns themselves, shining secrets into the hearts of those who watched. Their glow was a reminder that light is life, that the sun was the great giver, the eternal watcher, and that those who held its image were custodians of its power. But what of the Atlantis connection? If, as some believe, the wisdom of a lost civilization survived in the Andes, then these discs are a bridge, linking the past to the present, the sunken city to the mountain temples. They carry a code written not in words, but in fire and metal. Message that light endures, that even beneath waves, beneath centuries of silence, the sun's fire never truly dies. As you let your mind drift now, imagine the glint of these discs in the flickering torchlight of ancient temples, the gentle warmth of gold against skin, the soft hum of ceremony. Let their quiet brilliance soothe you. Let their fire cradle you, and rest, wrapped in the light of a forgotten sun. There is a hush in the sacred valley that cannot be explained. It is not silence. It is presence, a sense that the earth here is listening, holding breath, holding memory. This long stretch of fertile land, known to the Inca as the Urubamba Valley, was no ordinary place. Flanked by jagged peaks and fed by a river that twists like a silver thread through the highlands, it was the lifeline of an empire, and, perhaps, something more. Some called it the Valley of the Gods. Here, the Inca built not just cities, but mirrors, reflections of the sky on earth, temples aligned with the stars, terraces that shaped the hills into sacred steps. This valley was a living book, each page a village, a temple, a field, tuned to the rhythms of cosmos and soil. But beneath its beauty there are secrets, the kind that whisper in wind, the kind that sleep in stone. From Pisac to Ollantaytambo, every site within the sacred valley seems to carry more than function or beauty. It carries intent. Take Moray, for instance. From a distance it appears as a series of concentric terraces, spiraling down into the earth like an ancient amphitheater. But step closer, and the mystery deepens. Each level of Moray experiences a slightly different microclimate, with temperature variations as much as 15 degrees Celsius between top and bottom. Some believe it was an agricultural laboratory used to experiment with crops across altitudes, but others wonder, was it more? The design resembles a vortex or a portal, perhaps even a memory of something lost, a technology that used shape and earth and sun to tune the land like an instrument. Then there is Atlanteam, built into the side of a mountain. This citadel defies explanation. Stone blocks weighing over 50 tons were transported from a quarry on the opposite side of the valley, across a river, up steep slopes, into place with uncanny precision. No wheels, no cranes, just knowledge. Above the site, a cliff face bears the image of what some believe to be Viracocha, the Inca's great teacher god, carved into the rock, watching the valley below. His gaze is not accidental. It aligns with the solstice sun. When light falls in just the right way, the cliff face illuminates, as if awakening. Even the layout of the town beneath. The citadel is shaped like an ear of corn, the sacred plant of the Inca. Symbol of life and cyclical time. All of this, the symmetry, the alignment, the hidden geometry, speaks of a people not only in harmony with nature, but in dialogue with it. They did not dominate the land. They composed with it. And yet something else lingers in the valley. Something older. In some corners, stones are found that do not match the craftsmanship of the Inca, but exceed it. Stones too large, too finely cut, too deeply eroded to be recent. Foundations upon which the Inca built, but did not claim. In Pisac, intricate terraces and ceremonial areas wrap around a mountain like a coiled serpent. Here, too, older stones lie at the core, whispering of an inheritance, a blueprint, a memory passed down, stone by stone. Could the sacred valley be more than an Inca achievement? Could it be a repository, a place chosen not simply for beauty or fertility, but because it echoed something deeper, a memory of Atlantis? Consider the legends. The valley, according to some oral traditions, was once guarded by sky beings. Others speak of a great teacher arriving from the sea, bearing knowledge, calming the elements, teaching balance. He came, taught, and vanished. Viracocha, the same name that echoes across stone faces and sun gates. If Atlantis fell to water, if its survivors sought high ground, the sacred valley would be a fitting refuge. It is remote, elevated, easily defended. But more than that, it vibrates, in myth and in metaphor, with continuity. Everything here is cyclical, circular, solar, like Atlantis itself, which Plato described as being built in rings, reflecting the cycles of the cosmos. Even the river running through the sacred valley, the Vilcanota, which becomes the Urubamba, was seen as the mirror of the Milky Way above. The valley, then, was not merely land. It was reflection, memory, code, encoded in terraces and temples, in trails that trace starlight, and perhaps encoded in the quiet spaces between. As night falls across the sacred valley, the wind moves slowly through eucalyptus trees and ancient stone walls. The river speaks in murmurs. The stars rise in slow ceremony above jagged ridgelines. Somewhere, among all this, beneath fields of quinoa and maize, beneath footpaths and forgotten stones, something remains. A silence, a map, a truth not yet fully remembered. Tonight, let yourself walk that valley in your mind, not with urgency, but with wonder. Step softly among the temples. Feel the cool breath of the terraces. Stand in Moray's spiral and look up into the infinite sky. And when the stars reflect in your thoughts, know that you, too, are part of the memory, a witness, a listener. Sleep now, cradled in the sacred valley, a valley that remembers, rising from the mists like a dream held between sky and stone. Machu Picchu sits above the Urubamba River, still, silent, eternal, nestled on a narrow ridge between towering Andean peaks. The city was never discovered by the Spanish. It was spared the plunder, the fire, the fall, and so it endured intact, like a sealed whisper from the past. To many, Machu Picchu is the crown jewel of Inca architecture, but to others it is something more, a riddle in granite, a final echo of a forgotten origin. Its layout, seemingly random to the casual eye, reveals harmony upon closer gaze. Temples, stairways, fountains, and dwellings are not scattered. They are placed, aligned with stars, solstices, and the contours of the sacred landscape. It is both sanctuary and observatory. At its heart stands the Inti Watana, the hitching post of the sun, a carved stone pillar sculpted with angles so precise that it casts no shadow during the equinox. The sun, in that brief moment, is perfectly balanced, tethered in place. The Inca believed this stone tied the earth, ensuring the seasons would return, the cycle would continue, and the world would remain in order. But this concept of tethering the sun, of aligning stone with celestial rhythm, echoes something far older. It echoes Atlantis. In Plato's description, Atlantis, too, was a civilization of rings, alignments, and ritual order, where temple placement mirrored celestial geometry, and divine balance was maintained through architectural harmony. Machu Picchu may be one of the last places where that ancient knowledge was fully honored. A final experiment, a final echo. Some scholars suggest that Machu Picchu was not merely a royal retreat or ceremonial site, but a university of sorts, a sacred repository for skywatchers, astronomers, engineers, and philosophers, a high place, safe from invasion and flood, where ancient teachings could be protected. If so, it worked. For a time, the Spanish never reached it. Time nearly forgot it, and yet it remained above the clouds, waiting. It wasn't until 1911, when Hiram Bingham was led to the site by local Quechua farmers, that the world remembered it. But what he found was not a crumbling ruin. It was a sleeping city. Walls still sharp, terraces still green, staircases still climbing toward the sky. And though questions abounded, who lived here? Why was it abandoned? The silence of the stones offered no easy answers. Instead, it offered a feeling, a presence, something that vibrates in the bones as you walk its narrow paths, where each turn opens into views both breathtaking and humbling. Here, clouds drift low and slow. Condors pass on wind not felt by those below, and time seems to falter, caught between breath and memory. One theory suggests Machu Picchu's builders deliberately chose a location at the convergence of geological fault lines, not for danger, but for energy. The site may sit upon an earth current, what ancient cultures called dragon lines or ley lines, subtle flows of electromagnetic force within the planet's crust. Was Machu Picchu not only aligned with the heavens, but also plugged into the earth? Did it serve as a kind of bridge between celestial wisdom and terrestrial power? If so, it makes sense that such a place would be used to preserve what remained of an ancient knowledge system, one possibly inherited from a vanished people, the lost world, the drowned city. Atlantis. There is even a whisper, soft and speculative, that Machu Picchu was built to mirror the Pleiades, the same star cluster that ancient civilizations across the globe revered, the same cluster the Inca watched to time their harvests, the same cluster linked to cycles of destruction and renewal in Mesoamerican calendars. In Atlantis mythology, the destruction of the city was linked with the stars, with alignments, timing, cosmic rhythms gone wrong. If Machu Picchu was designed to echo the Pleiades, then perhaps it was also meant to warn or to remember its builders knew something was lost, but not forever. So they carved a message in stone and tucked it into the mountains and waited. What makes this even more compelling is Machu Picchu's layered construction as with other sacred Andean sites. The foundation stones are older, larger, more precisely cut, while the upper levels bear classic Inca technique. This suggests, once again, that the Inca inherited something here, that they found a site already sacred, already aligned, already wise. And instead of erasing it, they built upon it. Preserving. Protecting. Honoring. Perhaps that is what Machu Picchu is. Not a beginning, but a memory. A sanctuary for the last echo of a forgotten song. Tonight, let your thoughts wander through its stone alleys, past walls warmed by centuries of sunrise, beneath windows that still frame stars in silence. Feel the breath of the high air. Feel the hush of the past pressing softly on your shoulders, and in that hush hear the faint echo, a civilization that remembered the stars, that spoke in terraces and temples, that built for beauty, yes, but also for survival. Their voices do not shout, they whisper, and their whisper still lives in Machu Picchu, waiting for the right listener. Sleep now. Dear traveler, the last echo is not lost. It is simply quiet. Tonight, it sings for you. Before printing presses and parchment scrolls, before ink flowed across pages, there were Q-U-I-P-U-S. From the Quichua word meaning knot. A quipu was a system of colored cords and strings, knotted and deliberate. Patterns hung like a curtain of meaning and read by touch, not sight. To the Inca, it was memory made material, a living ledger, a fabric of thought. And those Spanish chroniclers described them as accounting tools, tallying taxes, harvests, and census counts. Modern researchers suspect the quipu was far more than a calculator. It may have been a written language, or perhaps something older, a bridge between sound, symbol, and number, a cipher that still waits to be understood. Hundreds of quipus have survived, made of llama hair and dyed cotton, braided into intricate patterns. Each cord contains a story, sometimes braided with as many as 1,000 knots, sometimes as few as a dozen. Some are brightly colored, others monochrome. Some are tightly spaced, others flow loosely, like a song unraveling. The knots themselves differ, overhand, long, figure 8, flat. The spacing matters, the position matters. Even the direction of twist, S or Z, plays a role. It is a language made not for eyes, but for hands. Not linear, but layered. And like the glyphs of ancient Egypt or the script of the Indus Valley, it is a system waiting to speak. Linguists have long puzzled over whether the quipu was purely numeric, a positional system for counting, or whether it included phonetic encoding, allowing the Inca to record names, places, events, and perhaps even stories. Recent breakthroughs suggest the latter. In a few rare quipus, researchers have found repeating patterns that correlate with known names of villages, suggesting that specific knot arrangements stood for syllables or concepts. If true, this makes the quipu not just a ledger, but a library, a silent archive. One that survived the fires of conquest, because it could not be read. Yet even the Inca themselves may not have been the originators of the QUIPU dot. There are hints, subtle and haunting, that the system predates them. Some fragments have been dated to Wari and Corral cultures, centuries before the Inca rose to power. Others bear weaving styles not found elsewhere in the Andes, as if a different people, perhaps a more ancient one, developed the technique and passed it down. And here the whisper returns, because of a civilization older than the Inca, one possessing advanced understanding of astronomy, measurement, and sacred geometry, sought to preserve its knowledge in a form that could not burn, would not rot, and could survive great upheaval. Would it not look something like the quipu? A coded thread, a fabric of memory, a message written in knots. If Atlantis fell, if its knowledge scattered, might some of its remnants have made their way to highland South America, hidden not in stone or gold, but in the most portable of forms. Thread. The idea is not so far-fetched. The myth of Viracocha, the teacher god who arrived after a flood and spread civilization, suggests a sea-born origin. And in Plato's telling, survivors of Atlantis fled to the edges of the known world, planting fragments of their wisdom in new soil. The Inca, inheriting what they found, may have preserved the outer form, the quipu, but lost the deeper code. Like a child reciting a chant without understanding its words, the true meaning of the quipu may lie dormant, encoded in pattern, tension, color, and rhythm, waiting for a new listener. Not every mystery is written in stone. Some are tied with string, and some of those strings hum with echoes. Imagine, now, a weaver in the mountains, seated on a mat, humming an old song, her fingers dancing across chords, dyed with river plants and mountain minerals. She ties one knot, then another. Each one precise, each one purposeful, not just counting, remembering, invoking. When complete, she wraps it in cloth and places it beside others, dozens of them, each recording something no one else may ever see again. Histories, prophecies, star maps. Now imagine those chords placed inside stone-lined chambers, buried beneath sacred hills, hidden in temple walls. Waiting. Not lost, only unread. In recent years, scholars have turned to computer modeling to try to decode quipus. Patterns are emerging, families of structure, repetition, and variance, like the grammar of a forgotten tongue. Some even believe the quipu might be binary in nature, the same yes-no structure used in modern computing. If so, then the Inca, or those who came before, may have built not just strings of memory, but strands of logic, a soft code, a silk algorithm, woven long before silicon chips hummed their first note. Tonight, as you drift toward dreams, think of the hands that tied those knots, with care, with reverence, with the weight of time in every twist. What were they saying? What were they hiding? What sacred memory rode along those colored threads? Perhaps one day we will know, or perhaps the message is not for minds, but for hearts, not to be solved, but to be held, like a prayer made of fiber, a lullaby written in knots, a secret meant only for those willing to feel, not just to read. So sleep now, under a sky woven with stars. And let the quipu cradle you, and its loops and lines and lullabies, like the long-forgotten voice of a lost world, gently pulling you home. Stone temples are often thought of as silent monuments, cold, immovable, mute. But the Andes whisper a different truth. Within the perfectly cut walls of Inca and pre-Inca temples, sound moves with intention. Echoes dance, voices carry. Music is woven into the architecture itself. Take the Temple of the Sun in Cusco. Its walls curve in smooth, sweeping arcs. Carved niches and trapezoidal doorways seem designed not just for strength, but for resonance. Speak softly here, and your voice will carry as if the stones themselves listen, amplifying prayer and song. Or consider Sacsayhuaman, the fortress. Above Cusco, where the massive stones align in a zigzag pattern. This shape may serve more than defense. Some researchers suggest it was designed to channel wind and sound, turning natural gusts into a haunting chorus, a song of stone and air. In the highlands, the idea of sound as sacred runs deep. The Andean people played conch shell trumpets, wooden flutes, and panpipes, instruments that blend naturally with the mountain wind. Music was not mere entertainment, but a tool of connection to the earth, the sky, and the unseen. Temples were stages for these sounds, places where music could resonate within stone chambers, calling forth spirits and gods. Even the positioning of temples reveals an acoustic understanding. Many were built near natural amphitheaters, caves or river bends where sound could echo, multiply, and mingle with nature's own music. At the ancient site of Chiven de Junter, older than the Inca, subterranean galleries act as natural resonators when priests played flutes or drums. In these tunnels, vibrations traveled through stone, creating a sensory experience that may have felt otherworldly. Such acoustic design is not accidental. It reveals a culture that understood sound's power as a carrier of memory, a healer of body and mind, and a bridge between worlds. But where does this lead us in the search for Atlantis? The lost civilization, said to be advanced in both technology and spirit, may have harnessed similar principles. Across the ancient world, sacred sites often combine architecture with sound. The resonance of standing stones at Stonehenge, in Egyptian temples, the music chambers in Mesopotamian ziggurats. Could the Andean temples be part of this global pattern? Could their acoustics be echoes of a shared knowledge, a language of vibration preserved across continents? The very stones themselves might be part of the message, not only in their shape and alignment, but in how they carry sound. Perhaps ancient rites involved chants and songs designed to activate these resonances, awakening energies stored in the earth. Imagine priests singing in the shadowed halls of Machu Picchu, their voices rising and falling like mountain winds. Imagine the flute's breath weaving through tunnels beneath Chiven, stirring spirits long dormant. Imagine the hum of stones vibrating softly, telling stories through the language of sound. Tonight, as you lie down, imagine the temples singing, a lullaby in stone and wind. Let the music rise around you, gentle as the night air. Let the vibrations carry you softly into dreams. And remember, even in silence, stone remembers how to sing for countless centuries. Before telescopes and modern science, the skies above the Andes were a living library. The Andean astronomers, priests, shamans, and sky watchers read the heavens as one reads a sacred text, full of signs, rhythms, and messages. Their knowledge was woven into stone, ritual, and myth. At the heart of this celestial dialogue was the Milky Way, which the Inca called Mayu, or the Celestial River. stretching across the sky. It mirrored the rivers flowing through the sacred valley below, a cosmic reflection of the earth's waters. They saw in Mayu not just stars, but dark constellations, shapes formed not by light, but by the voids between stars. Among these were the llama, the fox, and the serpent, creatures as vital to their sky as their terrestrial counterparts. Unlike many ancient cultures that focused solely on bright stars, the Andean astronomers honored these dark shapes, sensing a balance between light and shadow. The sky was not simply a map of lights, but a complex interplay of presence and absence, a cosmic tapestry woven with contrasts. Let your body rest. Let the quiet heal you, not by force, but by permission. Feel the memory of warm stone against your back, the scent of coca and earth, the slow rhythm of ancient drums in your chest. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are part of the old rhythm, and healing is not a miracle. It is remembering. Sleep now, dear traveler. Let the lost knowledge rise again, in your bones, your dreams, your breath, for what was lost was never forgotten. In the shadowed corridors of Inca temples and ancient fortresses, the stones speak in silence. Some stones are ordinary, shaped by hammer and chisel, fitted by labor and sweat. Others are extraordinary. There are stones that fit so perfectly together, not even a blade of grass can slip between their edges. Their surfaces are polished smooth, their angles sharp, their curves flowing like water shaped by an unseen hand. Among these is a particular stone found deep within the walls of Sacsayhuaman and elsewhere in the Andes that challenges all conventional explanation. It weighs many tons. It is carved with such precision that modern tools struggle to replicate its shape. Its surface is so smooth and its fit so exact. Many experts say it could not have been made with simple bronze or stone tools. Yet it rests quietly, hidden in plain sight. The stone's origin is a puzzle wrapped in mystery. Geologists have studied its composition and found minerals altered by intense heat and pressure, as if it were forged in a furnace hotter than any known ancient kiln. Its shape and finish resemble techniques found not in the Americas, but in far older civilizations, those of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the lost Atlantis. Some suggest this stone is a fragment of a forgotten technology, a tool set passed down from an earlier culture whose skills were so refined they bordered on the impossible. Others propose a more startling theory, that these stones were not carved at all, that they were cast, molded from a molten mixture of minerals, much like modern concrete, but far older. If true, this rewrites the story of Andean architecture entirely. Instead of mere stonemasons, these builders would be ancient engineers wielding a technology centuries ahead of their time. The implications ripple through history. If this knowledge came from a lost civilization, if it was inherited from Atlantis, then the Andes become not just a cradle of empire, but a repository of ancient science, a library written in rock. These stones are not just foundation. They are message. A challenge. A question carved in granite and quartz. Who were we before we forgot? One stone, known as the 12-angled stone in Cusco's Hatton Rumiak Street, is particularly famous. Its sides interlock with 12 distinct angles, each meeting another with perfect harmony. It has resisted earthquakes, invasions, and time itself. Yet how was it shaped? No marks of chisel or hammer remain. Theories abound. Some say extraterrestrial help. Others claim lost Atlantean masters who taught the Inca their craft. Skeptics warn against mysticism, but even they admit the stone remains unexplained. This silent sentinel stands as proof that beneath the mountain mists lies knowledge deeper than history books reveal. Ancient hands worked not only with muscle, but with wisdom, with secrets encoded in stone, waiting for eyes patient enough to see the stone that shouldn't exist is a key puzzle piece from a civilization that understood earth and fire, matter and energy in ways we are only beginning to glimpse as night falls across the Andes. Let your thoughts rest on this stone. Imagine its cool surface beneath your fingers. Feel the weight of centuries in its perfect angles. And listen, as the stone hums softly with forgotten song. Sleep now, held by the memory of rock and flame. The past is not lost. It waits, shaped by hands beyond time. Beneath the quiet mountains, look up into the night sky above the Andes, and you will see a river, not of water, but of stars. The Milky Way stretches from horizon to horizon, a luminous thread woven through the darkness. To the ancient Andean peoples, this was no mere decoration. It was Mayu, the celestial river. This glowing band of light mirrors the winding rivers below, the Urubamba, the Apurimac, the Madre de Dios, veins of life flowing through the rugged terrain. In this cosmic reflection, the Andean people found not only beauty, but meaning. Mayu was both the sky and the earth, a bridge between worlds. But the Milky Way was more than a river of light. It was a map, a guide, a sacred story written across the fabric of night. Unlike many cultures that drew constellations from stars themselves, the Andes revered the dark shapes, the shadows cast between stars. These voids formed animals that soared and crept. Across the sky there was the llama, its dark form outlined between bright stars, guiding herds across the heavens. The serpent, coiled and twisting, symbolizing transformation in the cycles of life. The fox, sly and watchful, a spirit of cunning and survival. These dark constellations echoed the land below, where llamas grazed and serpents slithered, weaving the earth and sky together in a living tapestry. This understanding was deeply woven into daily life. The movements of Mayu dictated agricultural cycles, hunting seasons, and ceremonial calendars. The rising and setting of dark constellations marked moments of change, times to plant, to harvest, to honor the spirits. The celestial river was also a pathway for souls. Many Andean beliefs hold that after death, the spirit journeys along the Milky Way, crossing rivers, mountains, and stars to reach the afterlife. In this, the river was not just a guide for the living, but a highway for the departed. The sacred landscape of the Andes mirrors this cosmic vision. Rivers and valleys echo the shapes of constellations. Mountain peaks align with star clusters, and temples, carefully placed on ridges and terraces, frame the flow of Mayu and its dark forms. The design is a living poem, a conversation between earth and sky, stone and star. This vision resonates deeply with the myth of Atlantis. Plato described Atlantis as a series of concentric rings of land and water, arranged in harmony with the cosmos. If survivors of Atlantis traveled across oceans, they may have carried with them an understanding of the sky as a river, a map, and a metaphor. The Andean reverence for the Milky Way, with its dark constellations and cosmic reflections, might be a fragment of that ancient legacy. Today, the river still flows. Each night, as stars emerge, the Milky Way spills across the heavens. Look closely, and you might see the shadowed forms, the celestial llamas, serpents, and foxes, moving silently. Timelessly. They are the keepers of stories, guardians of memory. And guides on the journey between worlds. Tonight, as you close your eyes, imagine floating gently down that river of stars. Feel the cool night. Hear the whispered songs of the cosmos. And know that you too are part of this eternal current. Sleep now, carried by the river's light and shadow. The stars watch over you. And the ancient stories flow on, endless as the night. The Andes stretch from north to south like a spine of stone and earth, crowned by peaks dusted with eternal snow. Among these icy heights, time seems to slow. Glaciers grind silently, frost wraps the land in crystalline embrace, and beneath the frozen surface lie mysteries hidden from sun and storm. For thousands of years, ice has preserved the past in its cold heart. Ancient pollen, bones, and artifacts sleep beneath the glaciers, locked away, almost untouched. In recent decades, scientists and explorers have begun to uncover these secrets. Melting ice reveals traces of civilizations long vanished, remnants of pathways, tools, and even frozen offerings left by ancestors to honor the mountain spirits. Among these finds are hints that the Andean peoples had a far deeper relationship with their environment than once believed. They understood not only the rhythms of the earth and sky, but the slow, patient language of ice and stone. This knowledge may have come from a time before the Inca, a time when climate shifted dramatically, forcing migrations and transformations. Could these icy echoes be the last vestiges of a civilization lost to flood and frost? Might they hold keys to the fate of Atlantis itself? Legends from the Andes speak of great floods and times when the earth's face was changed forever. Stories of sunken lands, of waters swallowing cities. Of ancestors who fled the rising tides and sought refuge in the mountain's cold embrace. These are not merely myths, they are memories coded in ice, wind, and stone. Beneath the glaciers, researchers have uncovered ancient terraces buried under centuries of snow, suggesting that human life once thrived at higher elevations before shifting climates forced retreats. Frozen mummies found in the region reveal sophisticated societies with complex rituals, art, and a deep spiritual connection to the mountains. Preservation offers a rare window into the past, and as the ice yields its secrets, it challenges the narrative of linear history. It suggests cycles of rise and fall, of loss and rediscovery. Of knowledge passed through generations, sometimes hidden, sometimes lost, but never entirely forgotten. In this frozen silence, one hears the whispers of the old world, the echoes of a civilization that may have survived the cataclysms that sank Atlantis, a civilization that shaped stone, sky, and spirit in equal measure. Tonight, as the cold night wraps around you, imagine the glaciers, slowly breathing. Feel the quiet strength beneath the ice. Listen for the faint murmur of the past, rising once again, and let the stillness lull you to sleep. For beneath the ice, memory endures, and beneath the silence the old stories wait, patient eternal, and softly calling you home. As the sun dips behind the mountains, the stones of ancient temples soften in the fading light, their surfaces worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain, still hold traces of meaning, a silent language left by hands long gone. Among the many mysteries of the Andes, there is one that stands apart, a message not written in words, but in form, placement, and presence, a message encoded in the very stones themselves. This message is subtle. It does not shout, it does not demand, it beckons gently, like a breath, a sigh, a quiet invitation to pause. Across sites like Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, and others, scholars and seekers have noted patterns, alignments with stars, geometric shapes carved into rock, and sequences of stones arranged with deliberate precision. Some see these as mere architectural feats. Others understand them as symbols, an ancient code bridging earth and sky, a final gift from those who remembered Atlantis, passed down through generations in stone and spirit. Consider the sacred geometry embedded in these structures. Triangles, spirals, and concentric circles appear repeatedly, shapes found not only in Andean temples, but echoed in the ruins of civilizations across the globe. Geometry is the language of the universe, the language of balance, harmony, and cosmic order. By embedding this language in stone, the builders left more than monuments. They left keys to understanding the world, the stars and ourselves. The golden ratio, a divine proportion, can be traced in the layout of sacred spaces. This ratio appears in the spiral of a seashell, the branching of a tree, the human face, and the orbits of planets. It is a pattern that connects life and cosmos, microcosm and macrocosm. By carving it into their temples. The ancient builders spoke in the language of creation itself. Another layer of the final message lies in the alignment of stones with celestial events. During solstices and equinoxes, sunlight pierces temple windows, illuminating sacred niches. At times the shadows cast form symbols, a serpent uncoiling, a condor's wings spread wide. These moments of light and shadow are like prayers in stone, ceremonies enacted by the universe itself. Perhaps the most profound aspect of the final message is its intentional mystery. It was never meant to be decoded by the casual observer. Only those who approach with reverence, patience, and open heart can begin to understand. It calls for humility, for recognition that knowledge is not a prize to seize, but a gift to receive. As you rest beneath the vast Andean sky tonight, imagine standing before these stones. Feel their cool weight against your palm. Sense the invisible threads that bind them, threads of light, geometry, and time. Listen closely. In the quiet between breaths, between heartbeats, the stones begin to speak. They whisper of balance, of cycles, unbroken. Of knowledge that transcends loss. The final message in stone is not just about the past. It is a call to the future. To remember our place in the cosmos. To honor the earth beneath our feet. To dream with open eyes. Sleep now, cradled by ancient stone. Let its silent message settle deep within you, and know that you are part of a story that stretches beyond time, a story waiting to unfold with the dawn. In every great mystery, There are those who keep the silence, not because they do not know, but because they understand the weight of knowing dot in the Andes. Long after the last empire crumbled and the conquerors came with iron and fire, a quiet lineage remained, not in temples, not in palaces, but in the villages tucked against the mountains, where time moves slow and breath follows the rhythm of wind and earth. Here, among the potato terraces and cloud-wrapped peaks, live the Q'ero people, descendants of the Inca, keepers of a deeper thread. They speak not of Atlantis, not aloud, but their rituals, their symbols, and the way they tend the land suggests they remember far more than history admits. The Q'ero hold within them the whispers of Pacos, Andean shamans, mystics, and spiritual guides. For them, the world is not divided into matter and spirit. It is all energy, all alive. Stones breathe, mountains feel. Rivers carry memory, and within every natural form resides a spirit, an apu, a yusta, a presence. The Q'ero believe they were entrusted with ancient knowledge by Viracocha, the great creator who came across the waters after a cataclysm, to rebuild, to teach, to guide. This story mirrors the Atlantean myth, as if a parallel tale lived on in the folds of Andean memory. What, then, do the Q'ero guard? Not weapons, not scrolls, but ways of seeing, a sacred perception of the world, where every gesture, every offering, every breath is part of a cosmic dance. Their rituals are simple but profound. They offer dispachos, intricate mandalas of leaves, flowers, sugar, and sacred objects, to Pachamama, the Earth Mother. These offerings are prayers not spoken, but assembled. They reflect a knowledge that understands balance, reciprocity, and invisible harmony. Some researchers, drawn by curiosity or hope, have tried to extract secrets from the Q'ero, but the answers don't come in the language of science or textbooks. They come in metaphors, in silence, in gestures that make sense only if you are listening, not just with your ears, but with your soul. And this, perhaps, is the greatest protection of all. The guardians do not hide the knowledge. They live it. They become it. And by doing so it cannot be stolen, corrupted, or misused. The Q'ero believe that we are now in the age of Pachacuti, a time of great turning, when the old world dies and the new begins. In such times, the ancient knowledge may return, not through institutions, but through awakening. Through remembrance. The secret, they say, is not locked in temples. It is within you. And when you live with integrity, when you listen to the wind and walk with reverence, the secret reveals itself, not as a flash of discovery, but as a quiet homecoming. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, imagine walking a narrow trail through the high Andes. A Q'ero elder walks beside you. They say little, but their presence feels like sunlight on stone. You pass beneath condors, across clear rivers, and through clouds so thick you can taste them. And somewhere along the path, you begin to feel it, not as information, but as understanding that the truth was never buried. It was always here. Waiting in the wind. In the stone. In you. Sleep now, gentle traveler. The guardians keep watch, and the secret is safe until the soul is ready to remember. Look upward, beyond the peaks, into the velvet night. The stars spill like scattered jewels, endless and ancient. For the Inca, These lights were not distant or cold. They were alive. They were ancestors. They were guides. They were the canvas of a story written long before history. The Inca called the Milky Way Mayu, the celestial river, a mirror of the earth's rivers that carried water, life, and spirit. Within this river they saw shapes carved, not by stars themselves, but by the dark spaces between the llama, the serpent, the fox, animals sacred to their people. This vision was unique, showing a profound understanding of light and shadow, of presence and absence. But more than myth, these stars served a practical purpose. They were the foundation of a calendar, a guide for agriculture and ceremony, marking the rhythms of planting, harvesting, and celebration. Temples and observatories across the empire were carefully aligned to celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of key stars. Such precision suggests knowledge passed down through generations, perhaps inherited from ancestors older than even the Inca themselves here. The connection to Atlantis stirs with quiet intrigue. Plato's Tale of a Sunken Empire describes a civilization rich in knowledge, of the stars, of earth, of spirit. Could the cosmic wisdom of the Andes be a fragment of that ancient heritage? The striking similarities between Andean star lore and ancient Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Mediterranean astronomy hint at a shared origin. Dark constellations, solar worship, celestial calendars, these threads weave a pattern across the ancient world. Perhaps survivors of Atlantis carried their knowledge across oceans, embedding it into the stars of new skies. The Inca sky watchers in their silent vigils atop mountain peaks may have been the keepers of this legacy. Their temples are not only earthly structures but celestial gateways, designed to catch the light of stars that once guided an ancient civilization. In the temple of Coricancha, the golden walls shimmered with reflected sunlight, creating an earthly echo of celestial fire. Here, the boundary between heaven and earth blurred, inviting contemplation of cosmic cycles. As the night deepens, the stars seem to pulse with stories waiting to be heard. The constellations shift with the seasons, a cosmic dance mirroring the cycles of life below. The ancestors whisper through the starlight, calling the living to remember. Tonight, as you close your eyes beneath your own canopy of stars, imagine the Inca sky watchers, silent and watchful, here, their breath mingling with the mountain winds. See their eyes reflecting the Milky Way's glow, and feel the echo of Atlantis ripple through the constellations. Let this ancient story cradle you, a lullaby of stars and stone. Sleep now beneath the eternal sky. The cosmos watches, and the story continues. There are moments in history when memory shifts, when the veils of forgetfulness thin, and the old stories begin to surface. In the Andes, beneath the vast sky and towering peaks, that moment is now. A subtle stirring is felt in the wind that moves through sacred valleys, in the stones warmed by the sun, and the songs carried by distant rivers. The awakening is gentle yet profound. It calls not to the eyes but to the heart. The ancient knowledge of stars and stone, of rivers and rituals begins to unfold once again. Like a dream remembered at dawn, it slips softly into consciousness. The process is not sudden. It is like the first light of morning, spreading slowly, revealing shadows and shapes previously hidden. Across the Andean communities, Traditional healers, shamans, and elders speak of a reawakening, a reconnection with Pachamama, Mother Earth, and the cosmic rhythms that govern life. This renewed awareness transcends culture and time. It touches a universal longing to know who we are, where we come from, and where we are going. The stories of Atlantis, long dismissed as myth or legend, are now being seen in a new light. Fragments of that lost civilization appear in ancient stonework, in the precise alignments of temples, in the shared language of stars. These echoes resonate deeply with the Andean worldview. They suggest that history is not a straight line, but a spiral, circling back, rising again, weaving old and new into a living tapestry. This awakening is also a call to action. To remember means to honor. To honor means to live in balance with the earth, with each other, and with the unseen forces that flow through all things, the guardians of ancient wisdom, the Quero, and other indigenous communities. Hold this knowledge not as relics but as living practice. They remind us that awakening is a journey inward as much as outward, a rekindling of the sacred flame within. As you prepare to rest tonight, allow this awakening to settle within you. Feel the slow pulse of memory stirring beneath your skin. Imagine the old stones of the Andes, silent but alive, reaching through time to touch your soul. Let the rhythms of the earth and stars guide your breath, and know that you are part of this unfolding story. The past is not gone. It is waiting, ready to awaken in your dreams. Sleep now, gentle traveler. Let the memory rise. And the ancient song carry you softly into the night. Close your eyes. Let the mountains fade. Let the temples dissolve into mist. Let the rivers still and the stars dim just enough to make room for something older than memory. You are drifting now into a place that lives between waking and dream, and there, rising from the depths of silence, comes a city not imagined but remembered. Atlantis. Not golden towers and marble columns, not shining domes or utopian perfection, but something quieter, wiser, more human. A civilization in balance with the earth, with the heavens, with itself. Its people spoke in soft tones, not because they lacked power, but because they had learned to wield it gently. They built not only with stone, but with resonance. Structures hummed with life. Water ran through channels that healed. Light was bent through crystal, not for spectacle, but for growth. And in the center of it all was a knowing, a shared understanding that everything was connected. They knew the stars not as distant fires, but as companions, the ocean not as boundary, but as womb. They did not conquer nature. They listened to it. And when the tides turned, whether by cosmic design, divine will, or their own missteps, they did not cry out. They remembered, and some among them sailed. They carried nothing but seed knowledge, fragments of the whole, wrapped in symbols, stone, and sacred breath. They followed the stars west, beyond the known horizon. And some found the Andes. There, among high peaks and winding rivers, they planted what remained, not in soil, but in story. In practice, ritual, in the patient chisel of stone and the careful tending of time. And so the code survived, not as a secret to be unlocked, but as a dream to be remembered, a dream that now lives in you, each time you listen to the wind without needing to name it. Each time you walk with care, touch the earth with reverence, or wonder what the stars might be saying, ... You are dreaming Atlantis again, ... and it dreams through you. The Inca, the temples, the rivers, the code, they were never separate. They were doorways, ... whispers, ... echoes of a truth that hums beneath everything, that what was lost was not destroyed. It was hidden, protected, waiting for the right moment to return, not as a city, but as a way of being. So rest now, dreamer. Let the fog rise over sacred valleys. Let the stars guide you one last time across that silver, celestial river. Let the crystal towers of memory shimmer faintly on the edge of sleep. Atlantis is not a place to find. It is a frequency to remember. And you, gentle traveler, are already tuning in. Sleep well. The dream is alive.